Welcome to Christian Books Club, and basically today I'm going to talk about some stuff that I'm doing a book. So basically I'm going through a book, and um, basically I'm talking about killing sin and what that means, and or conquering sin. So I've been going through a couple things. So this next part that I'm going to talk about is called Confessing It. And I think there's 3 more parts until this book is done. And then I will move on to the next one, of course. So this next point that I'm going to make is called Confessing It. So break the sin before it breaks you is the main thing that I'm going to talk about. So break the sin before it breaks you. And when I say sin, there are a couple different words you can use besides sin. There's other words that people can use. But the main verse is Romans 8:13. For if you live according to the flesh, you will die. But if by the Spirit you put to death the deeds of the body, you will live. So like I said, sin is a lot of different words. It can mean a lot of different things depending on what it is. So don't hide your sin. Don't hide your sin in the closet. The fear of consequences can cause people to hide from God. So we try to hide our sin and put it in the closet so nobody sees it, because we're scared of the consequences. So we try to hide from God. Just like a parent to a child, a parent to a child. Basically, when they do something bad, what are they going to do? They're going to run and hide. Why? Because they're scared of the consequences that they're going to receive from their parents. You can't afford the price to break your relationship with God. So if you don't want to have a relationship with God, that's okay. I got a question. Can you afford not having that relationship? The cost of hiding sin is like a hillside, rising and falling, or a slope that is the ratio of the change between 2 distant points on the line for any choice. So the cost of hiding is like a hillside, rising and falling, or a slope that is the ratio of the change between 2 distant points on the line for any choice. So just come clean. But hiding the sin is compounding the effects of sin. If you just hide it, then you justify the sin, making the sin stronger. Sin stays in the shadows, getting strength in the dark. So sin fights with the power of hell to never be called out. You begin to have strength when you force it to be known. When you carry your sin, no matter how big, to God, a power starts to happen. Sin loses its strength when you call it and drag it into the light and agree with God that it must die. Sin is ugly to your spirit. So sin is not a good look. So come clean to God. So confession is simple to reveal when we agree with God that sin is a problem. We need to lift our head and face God and make a decision that He knows what the sin is to conquer it, or be stopped in your walk of faith. Being in agreement with God is where freedom begins and sin is defeated. So being in agreement with God is where freedom begins and sin is defeated. So Psalms 1:15 says, so Psalms 1:15 says, "Blessed is the one whose transgressions is forgiveness, whose sin is covered. Blessed is the man against whom the Lord counts no iniquity, and in whose spirit there is no deceit. For when I keep silent, my bones waste away, through my groaning all day long. For day and night your hand was heavy upon me. My strength was drained up as by the heat of summer. I acknowledged my sin to you and did not cover my iniquity. I said, I will confess my transgressions to the Lord, and you forgive the iniquity of my sin." So Psalms 1:5. So the first takeaway of that verse is the results of sin are real. To those who fear God is that the things we used to just pass by now stop us in our tracks. The awareness that we have with God impacts the who we are, body, soul, and spirit. So the awareness that we have God impacts the who we are. So if there's no awareness about God, then how do you know who you are if there's no awareness about God in your life? There's no impact in your body, there's no impact in your soul, and there's no impact in your spirit because your awareness of God isn't there. There's nothing that you care about God, and there's no awareness for Him. So you will always reap what we sow. Or we, or you, or I will always reap what I sow. Sin can make us feel God's hand making us press into Him when we sin. So sin makes you weak and sick, or sin will make you weak and sick. And the next point is the blessings of confession are strong. The sin we try to diminish is now impossible to see to God by His choice. God wipes clean the sin we couldn't see. The scoreboard is reset to 0. No matter how much Satan may blame you, our confession of sin leaves no mark on us. Confession of sin is not without pain. So forgiveness is always free, so I don't make people pay for mine. But it is not easy. It can be hard if you don't give the responsibility to God's care. You are not stuck in your sin if you confess. You can have relief and liberation to make a way for healing. So forgiveness is always free, so I don't make people pay for mine, but do you make people pay for yours? If somebody wants to forgive you, do you have to make them pay for something just to forgive you? Or they pay for something and they give it to you, oh, now I forgive you because you paid for it. When it's supposed to be, forgiveness is supposed to be free. So this is confession tactics. So the first one is drag the one thing into the light. So you may need to be more focused on dealing with that one thing. It is easy to deal with the things to make us feel better about ourselves without dealing with the one thing that is holding you back from victory and receiving God's blessing. So number 2, confess your sin to God by agreeing with Him and doing whatever it takes to correct wrongs. So call it by name. So the next point is number 3, confess your sin to a trusted friend or spiritual leader. So confess your friend to a trusted friend. Don't confess your sin to an unworthy or somebody you don't trust friend, or never confess your sin to just anybody. You have to make sure that when you want to confess your sin, that it's a good, trusted person, not just anybody random. Just make sure that you choose the right person to confess your sin, because if you don't, then they can probably not help you with that confession. They'll just probably make it worse and they won't give good advice. So confession to a trusted friend is God's way of putting into confession. So there's something about someone in the flesh hearing our heartfelt admission of sin. So we need to have somebody trusted, so we can release that sin, so we can share that sin to a trusted friend, so we can get that admission that we need to get. So we can bring a good friendship and steal that power from Satan. So if you have a good friend, then you should be able to confess your sin, so you can have that admission to have a good friendship and release and get the power away from Satan. Number 4, celebrate that the stronghold of your sin is broken. So you don't need to do time in a penalty box. So I have sin doesn't mean I'm going to stay in the penalty box. I'm going to confess my sin so I can have that victory and celebration that I confess that sin and it's not a stronghold anymore. So you don't need to feel like you need to pay penance. The price for your sin was paid at the cross. When God looks at you, he sees the righteousness of his son. So when God looks at me, what does he see? Somebody who has the righteousness of the son, because I confess my sin. So when God looks at me, he looks at me with that righteousness. So I gotta do something. I gotta celebrate because it's worth it. So we like to celebrate every day, or we like to celebrate things, but do you celebrate the things that matter in your life? Do you celebrate the good things in life? So celebrate the love of God, who sees you for who you are and loves you still. And do you have friends that see you for who you are and still love you? So when you confess your sin, do you have friends that will still love you for who you are and not walk away from you because they look at you different because of what you confessed with your mouth, or you confess that sin? So maybe they decide to leave because they think that you're becoming a different person. And that's how it is. Sometimes we want to become a better person, but we got to remove the obstacles in your way to become that better person, or to become a better version that you need to be. Sometimes you need to cut off those things that hold you from it. And sometimes it may include people, it may include things, it may include places. It all depends on the situation. And also Psalms 36:6-7 says, "Therefore let anyone who is godly offer a prayer to you at a time when you may be found. Surely in the rush of great waters they shall not reach him. You are a hiding place for me. You preserve me from trouble. You surround me with shouts of deliverance." Psalms 32:6-7. So David can compromise his confession and forgiveness to a military conquest. So the shouts of deliverance are what David felt in his heart when he experienced the retreating of torment in his soul. So we need to shout our deliverance, we need to shout our confession, so we can feel in our heart that experience of of getting that tormented soul free. So when you think your battle with sin cannot be won, God gives you the victory. So even if you think that sin cannot be defeated, God already handed you the victory by confessing it. All you need to do is confess it, and the victory will be yours. So you can reclaim it. Whatever the enemy stole, you need to confess with your sin. You need to confess the sin, so whatever the enemy took away from you, you can have victory and take it back and reclaim what is yours. Reclaim what has been stolen in your life. Reclaim that victory that you need to have in your life by confessing that sin that weighs you down, that weighs on your conscience, and that weighs on you, and that stops you from being free, from being liberated. I think, yeah. So that's it for that one. How many more? I think there is one more to go. Looks like there's one more chapter to go, and then it's basically done. So I'll be right back with the last chapter of this book. And God is good all the time. Let me see if there's anything else. So just the last point here. Have you ever experienced the joy of confession? What were the effects on your life? What keeps you from confessing your sin to others? To whom can you confess the one sin that is defeating you? And last question, how can you celebrate the stronghold of the one thing being broken? And God is good all the time. And this is the last chapter after this, and I'll be right back.